Wealth is a skill, why riches aren't luck they're learned. Written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. You've been lied to. Not maliciously, perhaps, but relentlessly. The lie is this: some people just get lucky with money. Right family. Right timing. Right connections. And if that's not you? Well, too bad. This belief doesn't just keep you broke. It keeps you powerless. Wealth isn't magic. It's mastery, a repeatable set of skills that anyone can learn. And like any skill, it starts with the decision to stop waiting and start training. Most people treat wealth like weather. Something that happens to them. But wealthy people treat it like a craft, something they get better at day by day. You don't stumble into lasting wealth. You build it, habit by habit, choice by choice, mindset by mindset. The difference isn't intelligence. It's instruction. The difference isn't inheritance. It's intention. As motivational legend Jim Rohn once said, if you don't like how things are, change it. You're not a tree. This book is your blueprint for that change. You'll learn how wealth is developed, not wished for. You'll see why savers, investors, creators, and owners think differently from consumers and paycheck chasers. You'll uncover the mental models, the emotional discipline, and the identity shift that turns ordinary earners into long-term builders. No hype. No hacks. Just the truth: wealth is a learnable skill. You don't need to be the lucky one. You need to be the learner. By the end of this book, you'll see wealth not as a mystery, but as a method. And you'll be equipped to start mastering it. Starting now. Chapter 1: The Lie of Luck. Everywhere you look, the myth is reinforced. Someone wins the lottery, sells a startup for millions, or inherits a fortune, and suddenly they're rich. Headlines celebrate the windfalls. Social media magnifies the extremes. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to believe a quiet, corrosive lie: wealth is something that happens to other people. This belief doesn't just distort reality, it disarms you. If wealth is random, then effort is pointless. If riches come from chance, then learning how money works feels like studying a language you'll never use. Why bother saving, investing, or building when the game seems rigged from the start? But step behind the curtain of most enduring wealth, and you'll find something far less glamorous, and far more empowering. Patterns. Skills. Habits. Mindsets. Things that can be learned, practiced, and repeated. There is a reason lottery winners often go broke within a few years. Without the internal structure to support the wealth, the money evaporates. Like water poured into a cracked vessel, it doesn't last. On the other hand, those who build wealth from scratch usually follow a process, often uncelebrated, frequently misunderstood, but entirely replicable. They make small decisions that compound over time. They delay gratification. They think in decades, not weekends. They seek ownership over appearances. And perhaps most importantly, they assume responsibility for their future instead of outsourcing it to luck. Imagine treating wealth the way an athlete approaches their sport. At first, the movements are awkward. You fumble the fundamentals. But over time, with repetition and good coaching, your instincts sharpen. What once felt foreign becomes second nature. The same applies here. Wealth is not reserved for the chosen few. It is earned by those who choose to learn. The difference between you and someone financially free isn't genetics, privilege, or luck. It's exposure. It's mindset. It's the willingness to train. Think of a self-made investor who started with nothing. What separates them from the person who spends every dollar they earn? Knowledge, yes. But also repetition, restraint, and resilience. Traits that can be developed, not inherited. The world is full of people waiting for their financial break. But the ones who succeed? They build it. When you believe wealth is a lottery ticket, you wait. When you believe it's a skill, you start. That simple shift can change everything. This book will not promise you overnight riches. It will not give you a shortcut, because one doesn't exist. What it will do is show you the path that real builders walk. The mindset shifts. The behaviors. The priorities. You'll see what wealthy people do differently, not just in moments of opportunity, but in ordinary, daily decisions. Because that's where wealth is made, in the hidden, uncelebrated hours where no one's watching. In the decision to save instead of spend. In the choice to invest in learning rather than lifestyle. In the courage to think long-term in a world obsessed with now. Luck will always play a role in life. But it's not the foundation of wealth. Discipline is. Vision is. Ownership is. And those things? You can train them. You're not behind. You're not disqualified. You're just beginning. And you're not betting on a break, you're building a skill. Wealth built on luck rarely lasts. Wealth built on skill compounds. The wealthy think long-term, value ownership, and act with intention. You can train for wealth the same way you train for any skill. Where have you been waiting for luck instead of training for wealth? Write down one financial habit you admire in someone else, and commit to practicing it once this week. Chapter 2: The Skill of Seeing Value. Wealth builders see the world through a different lens, not one tinted by trends or urgency, but by value. Where most people see price tags, they see potential. Where others chase status, they chase substance. This ability to see value where others don't is one of the most foundational wealth skills, and yet it's almost never taught. Value isn't just about dollars. It's about worth. It's the distinction between what something costs and what it creates. A new phone might cost $1,200, but what does it create? A fleeting thrill? A dent in your savings? Compare that to $1,200 invested in learning a skill or buying an asset that produces income over time. One fades. The other compounds. People who accumulate wealth aren't just frugal. They're strategic. They don't avoid spending, they spend differently. Every dollar is asked a question: will you work for me or disappear? That's not stinginess. That's stewardship. This skill shows up in subtle, daily decisions. Buying a used car and investing the difference. Choosing a side hustle over a shopping spree. Attending a workshop instead of booking another vacation. The wealthy don't just delay gratification, they reframe it. They've learned that fulfillment comes not from immediate consumption, but from creating long-term options. Consider how value shapes decisions around time. While many trade hours for wages, wealth builders eventually shift to leverage, owning systems, assets, or skills that separate time from income. They start to see time as the most valuable currency, and they guard it accordingly. Even in relationships, value thinking shows up. They seek people who grow them, challenge them, and align with their goals. They understand that proximity shapes potential. They know that one right conversation, mentor, or collaborator can create exponential returns. To the average eye, this might look like overthinking. But to the wealth-minded, it's discipline. It's a refusal to be swayed by impulse or noise. They know that the world is loud with distraction and that their future depends on clarity. Value is also about seeing what others ignore. A cluttered garage becomes a resale opportunity. An overlooked niche becomes a business idea. A daily hour becomes time to build a skill. It's not about brilliance. It's about vision, and the willingness to act when others shrug. This perspective doesn't require a fancy degree or a financial advisor. It requires practice. Like training your eyes to see patterns in a new language, you can train your mind to notice value. At first, you'll miss things. You'll default to convenience or emotion. But if you stay curious, if you keep asking, what's the lasting value here? You'll begin to make decisions that multiply instead of evaporate. Think of two people with the same income. One spends based on moods. The other based on meaning. Over 5 years, their outcomes won't just look different, they'll live on different planets. This chapter isn't about guilt, it's about awareness. Every day, you are offered 100 tiny choices. And each one moves you closer to value or away from it. Clarity comes when you train yourself to pause, assess, and act with the future in mind. Wealth builders aren't lucky. They're just relentlessly clear on what matters. And they get better at spotting value because they've decided that long-term freedom is worth more than short-term thrill. Now it's your turn to train that eye. Wealthy people focus on value, not just cost, they ask. What will this create? Strategic spending isn't deprivation, it's a choice to prioritize long-term gains. The ability to see value is a skill you can train with consistent practice. Where in your life are you choosing price over value, and what's the cost? Before your next purchase, pause and ask, will this multiply or fade? Choose accordingly. Chapter 3: How Wealth Thinks Differently. Most people think about money in terms of survival or comfort. Wealthy people think in terms of systems, leverage, and legacy. The gap isn't just in income, it's in mindset. The wealthy approach decisions, risks, and opportunities with a different operating system. And the sooner you adopt that way of thinking, the sooner your results will follow. One of the most striking differences is how the wealthy view problems. Where most avoid difficulty, wealth-minded individuals lean in. They see problems as puzzles, not threats. While others ask, how do I get through this? They ask, what can I build because of this? This reframe shifts them from reactive to proactive, from overwhelmed to in control. Wealthy thinkers are also obsessed with patterns. They notice what most ignore, the consistent habits that produce results. If something works, they don't just celebrate it, they study it, scale it, and repeat it. They know that success leaves clues, and they become students of those clues. Their decisions are rarely emotional. That doesn't mean they're cold, it means they prioritize logic over impulse. When prices drop in the market, the average person panics. The wealth thinker sees opportunity. When the crowd rushes in one direction, they pause, assess, and often go the other way. They understand that lasting gains often lie where others aren't looking. Another mental distinction is the focus on control. Wealth builders ask, what can I own? Whether it's equity, content, assets, or systems, they don't just work for income, they work for ownership. They know that time is limited, but ownership can create freedom that scales. This mindset allows them to detach from dependency and build streams of value that continue flowing, even when they're not present. Risk is another area where wealthy minds diverge. To most, risk is something to fear. But to the wealthy, risk is something to understand. They don't chase risk, but they don't run from it either. They analyze it, manage it, and use it to create leverage. The key difference is they prepare for risk, while others avoid it entirely and stay stuck. There's also a deep commitment to learning. Wealth thinkers are voracious learners, not just in theory, but in application. They're constantly upgrading their mental software, reading, observing, questioning. Not because they're insecure, but because they understand that better input equals better output. In a rapidly changing world, learning isn't optional, it's the edge. But perhaps the most underrated wealth trait is the ability to zoom out. When others obsess over this week's expenses, they're thinking in years. When others focus on status today, they're planting seeds for tomorrow. This long view isn't glamorous, but it's effective. It builds resilience, reduces reactionary decisions, and keeps them aligned with their true goals. It's easy to believe that this mindset is reserved for those already wealthy. But that's the trap. The mindset isn't the result of wealth, it's the cause. And anyone, at any income level, can begin practicing it. You don't need a raise to think differently. You need a lens that prioritizes ownership over expense, learning over ego, and patterns over luck. The results will follow the thinking, because that's where wealth begins. This shift won't happen all at once. But it can begin today. And the more you train your mind to see like a builder, the more you'll act like one. Wealthy people think in patterns, ownership, and long-term impact. Emotions don't lead their financial decisions, systems, and day-to-do. The mindset of wealth can be practiced before the money arrives. Which of your current money habits reflect emotion instead of intention? Identify one financial decision you're facing. Write out the emotional impulse, then write out the long-term logic. Choose the latter. Chapter 4: Mastering the Boring Stuff. Wealth isn't built in moments of excitement. It's built in the repetition of small, unglamorous actions. The truth is, most people aren't failing financially because they're incapable, they're failing because they're bored. The habits that create wealth aren't thrilling. They're routine. And that's exactly why they work. There's nothing flashy about reviewing your budget. Nothing thrilling about saying no to a third streaming service. No applause comes from packing lunch instead of dining out. But these small, forgettable choices, stacked and repeated, create momentum. The problem is, we've been conditioned to expect results from spectacle. If something doesn't feel exciting, we assume it isn't working. But wealth doesn't respond to drama. It responds to discipline. The average person looks for financial change in big swings, a raise, a business idea, a lucky break. But wealth builders know better. They find power in consistency. They understand that skipping one impulse buy isn't going to make them rich, but doing it 10 times a month for 10 years might fund an investment property. They don't confuse simplicity with insignificance. Think about compound interest. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. You save a little, invest a little, and the numbers barely move. But over time, the results become exponential. That's the math of mastery. And the math doesn't work unless you're willing to be boring. The same principle applies to skills. Learning how to manage money, track expenses, or read investment statements doesn't light up your brain like a dopamine hit. But those skills are the scaffolding of financial freedom. Most people quit before they even get competent, not because it's hard, but because it's dull. The wealthy keep going. They understand that behind every exciting result is a series of mundane choices. They also build systems to reduce decision fatigue. They automate savings. They create checklists. They simplify routines. This isn't because they're lazy, it's because they're efficient. The fewer choices they have to make about daily finances, the more mental space they preserve for creative and strategic thinking. Even the wealthy aren't immune to boredom. The difference is they don't use boredom as a reason to change paths. They use it as proof they're on the right one. If the habits feel repetitive, they know they're building something solid. Look at elite athletes, musicians, or surgeons. Their excellence is rooted in repetition. Drills. Scales. Procedures. The same motions, over and over, until excellence becomes muscle memory. Wealth is no different. The boring stuff is the training. This also explains why financial entertainment rarely translates to financial improvement. Watching videos about money feels productive. But unless it leads to a habit, it's just another form of consumption. The wealthy prioritize doing over watching. They don't just know what to do, they actually do it. Repeatedly. You won't always feel like sticking to the plan. That's normal. But the more you practice these habits, the less you'll rely on motivation. Routine will carry you when excitement fades. Mastery isn't about intensity. It's about consistency. And consistency lives in the unremarkable. In the spreadsheets. In the small yes. In the invisible wins. If you're bored, take heart. You might be closer to building wealth than you think. Wealth is built through small, consistent actions, not big, exciting moves. Boredom isn't failure. It's often a sign you're doing the right work. Systems and routines beat motivation over the long haul. What boring, financial habit have you avoided that could actually build your future? Set up one automated financial habit today, like auto transfer to savings or auto pay on a bill. Chapter 5: Saving, the first muscle. Before you invest, before you build a business, before you think about financial freedom, there's one foundational muscle you must train: saving. Not because saving alone will make you wealthy, but because it proves you can control the flow of money. It's not about the amount. It's about the behavior. Saving is the first sign that you've shifted from consumer to controller. Most people treat saving as optional, something they'll do when there's extra. But for wealth builders, saving is non-negotiable. It comes first, not last. They understand that the habit is more valuable than the number. $10 saved with intention is more powerful than $100 spent on autopilot. This discipline begins with one simple truth: if you don't learn to keep part of what you earn, you will always be dependent. Dependent on your next paycheck, your next job, your next raise. Saving creates space. It gives you breathing room. It turns financial panic into financial margin. There's nothing magical about saving, but there is something transformational. It interrupts the cycle of living on the edge. It teaches you to plan. It reminds you that every dollar has a job, and your future should be one of them. This is why wealthy people save even when they earn more. They're not saving because they're scared. They're saving because they're strategic. They know that every dollar stored today can become a seed for tomorrow. Whether it's for emergencies, investments, or opportunities, they always have a cushion. And that cushion gives them options. One of the biggest mental shifts in saving is treating it like a bill, not a leftover. The same way you never skip rent or your phone payment, you shouldn't skip paying your future self. That's how wealth thinkers operate. They automate it, protect it, and increase it over time. They don't wait to feel like saving. They design their environment to save consistently. Most people think they have an earning problem when they really have a spending problem. Or more specifically, a priority problem. The issue isn't that the money isn't enough. The issue is that it's already spoken for by habits, pressures, and a culture obsessed with upgrades. Saving is how you take the power back. It's how you say, I run my money. It doesn't run me. Even small savings build confidence. They signal that you are not living at the mercy of your next purchase. That's why building a starter emergency fund, $500, $1,000, whatever your next target is, isn't just financial progress. It's psychological progress. It proves you're in motion. That you're not just reading about wealth, you're starting to behave like someone who builds it. And make no mistake, how you save at $30,000 a year is how you'll save at $300,000. The numbers may change, but the mindset carries over. If you can't save small, you won't magically start saving large. That's why this muscle matters. It's not just about stacking cash. It's about training discipline. Saving doesn't have to be extreme. You don't need to cut everything fun or hoard money out of fear. You simply need to choose consistency over convenience. Systems over moods. The habit over the hype. Start where you are. Build from there. Every dollar you save is a vote for your future. Keep casting votes. Saving is a foundational wealth habit. It proves you can manage what you have. It's not about how much you save, but how consistently you do it. Treat saving like a bill, not a bonus. Are you saving intentionally, or only when money happens to be left over? Set up an automatic weekly transfer, no matter how small, into a separate savings account. Chapter 6. Investing, your money at work. Once you've trained the habit of saving, the next evolution is learning to invest. Saving preserves what you earn. Investing multiplies it. If saving is about protection, investing is about production. It's how money begins to work for you instead of you always working for money. Most people never make this shift. They either avoid investing out of fear, or they gamble in it out of impatience. But wealth builders understand the difference between risk and recklessness. They don't treat investing like a lottery ticket. They treat it like planting a tree. Slow, intentional, and designed to bear fruit over time. The purpose of investing isn't excitement, it's progress. True investing is boring on the surface but powerful beneath it. It works quietly while you sleep, while you work, while you live your life. And over time, the effects are dramatic. A single invested dollar can outgrow dozens of spent ones, simply because it's given a job to grow. Wealth thinkers understand the power of compound interest. They know that time in the market beats timing the market. They don't try to outguess every fluctuation, they build steady, long-term strategies. They automate contributions, diversify intelligently, and stay patient. They trust the process because they understand the principle. Investing also changes your identity. When you invest, you stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like an owner. You move from renting outcomes to building them. Whether it's stocks, real estate, businesses, or intellectual property, ownership creates leverage. It generates returns that your labor alone can't replicate. One of the biggest mental shifts in becoming an investor is detaching from short-term noise. News cycles scream urgency. Markets wobble. Everyone has an opinion. But wealth builders don't react to headlines, they follow principles. They ask, is this decision aligned with my long-term goal? And act accordingly. You don't need to become an expert overnight. You need to become consistent. Even small, steady contributions, $50 a month, $100 a paycheck, can snowball over time. The key is to start. Then to keep going. Because every day you delay, your money loses time it could have been growing. This is why investing must be tied to a plan, not a feeling. If your investments depend on how the market makes you feel this week, you'll always be at the mercy of your emotions. But if they're grounded in your long-term vision, you'll have the confidence to stay the course, even when the ride gets bumpy. Investing isn't reserved for the wealthy. It's how people become wealthy. And just like any skill, it can be learned. You can study the basics. Use simple, proven tools. Ask questions. Start small. And grow in confidence as you grow your assets. It's also worth noting that the best investors aren't just putting money into markets. They invest in themselves. In their skills. Their networks. Their mindset. Because they know that the highest ROI often starts internally. A smarter mind creates smarter money. So the goal here isn't to chase hype. It's to build habits. To become someone who sees money not just as a means of survival, but as a tool for creation. Investing is how you stop trading time for every dollar. It's how freedom begins to scale. And once you see money working on your behalf, you'll wonder why you ever waited. Investing multiplies your money by putting it to work, slowly and steadily. Wealth builders focus on long-term consistency, not short-term emotion. Ownership creates leverage, and leverage builds freedom. What belief about investing has kept you from starting, or from staying consistent? Open or review an investment account this week, and set up a recurring monthly contribution, no matter how small. Chapter 7: The Power of Ownership. Wealth is not built by trading time for money. It's built by owning the systems, ideas, and assets that generate value even when you're not working. Ownership is the lever that multiplies effort. It's how you escape the limits of hourly thinking and step into scalable impact. Most people operate in a cycle of earned income. They work, they get paid, they spend, and they repeat. This loop can feel productive, but it's rarely freeing. As long as your income is tied to your effort, your time remains your ceiling. Wealth thinkers break this pattern by asking a different question. What can I own that creates value without me? Ownership comes in many forms. Stocks, real estate, digital products, intellectual property, equity in a business. The specific vehicle varies, but the principle stays the same. Owning assets means controlling outcomes. Instead of being at the mercy of someone else's decisions, you build streams of income that are rooted in your initiative. The mindset shift toward ownership isn't always easy. It requires delayed gratification. It often starts with work that doesn't pay immediately. But that front-loaded effort creates back-end reward. Think of an author who earns royalties from a book they wrote years ago, or a landlord whose property generates rent every month. The work was done once. The income continues. Ownership also teaches responsibility. When you own something, you think long-term. You take care of it. You improve it. Whether it's a side business, a piece of land, or a share of stock, ownership sharpens your focus. It gives you a stake in the outcome. And that stake creates maturity. Many people hesitate to pursue ownership because it feels complex or risky. But complexity can be simplified. Risk can be managed. What can't be managed is the risk of staying dependent. Renting your future is far riskier than owning your growth. Consider the difference between someone who only earns a paycheck and someone who also earns from investments, or a small business. One relies on a single source. The other builds options. Ownership doesn't just increase your income, it increases your control. And control is a currency wealth builders value deeply. You don't need to own everything at once. Start small. Buy one share of a company you believe in. Launch a micro product. Partner in a small venture. The act of owning, even something tiny, triggers a new level of thinking. Suddenly, you're not just participating in the economy. You're shaping it. Ownership also changes how you see value. Instead of looking for what something costs, you begin to ask what it could return. You shift from consumer to creator. From passive to proactive. from temporary gains to lasting assets. This principle applies far beyond money. Ownership of your time, your habits, your learning, all of it feeds the wealth-building engine. Because when you take ownership of your inputs, you begin to influence your outcomes. And that influence grows. The truth is, you can only earn so much. There are only so many hours in a week. But assets can earn beyond your effort. That's the power of ownership. It breaks the link between time and money, and replaces it with leverage. Wealthy people don't just have more money. They have more multipliers. And every one of those multipliers started with the choice to own something instead of just use it. If you want freedom, start building things that keep working even when you rest. Ownership is the foundation of scalable wealth. It multiplies effort. Even small forms of ownership shift your mindset from dependent to empowered. The path to freedom begins when you stop renting outcomes and start building them. Where in your life are you still trading effort for income when you could be building assets? Choose one simple ownership opportunity this month: buy a stock, start a side hustle, or create a digital product, and commit to it. Chapter 8: Failure as Feedback. Every wealth builder has one thing in common: they've failed, sometimes repeatedly. The difference isn't that they avoided mistakes. It's that they learned how to use them. For most people, failure feels final. For the wealthy, it's fuel. It's data. It's the tuition you pay for wisdom you couldn't buy any other way. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's a prerequisite. The path to wealth is paved with experiments that didn't work, investments that underperformed, and decisions that backfired. But each misstep, handled correctly, sharpens your thinking. It reveals blind spots. It tests your discipline. It teaches you faster than any book or course ever could. Most people quit when something doesn't work the first time. They take it personally. They assume it means they're not cut out for this. But those who build wealth think differently. They expect setbacks. Not because they're careless, but because they know that progress isn't clean. It's messy, nonlinear, and filled with recalibration. Think of a skilled investor who made a poor trade. Instead of spiraling, they review what happened. What assumption was off? What did they miss? What signal did they misread? Then they adjust. They don't repeat the error, but they also don't retreat. That cycle, act, assess, adapt, is at the core of wealth building. Fear of failure is one of the biggest barriers to financial growth. It keeps people from starting businesses, investing in markets, or taking calculated risks. But what most don't realize is that the cost of inaction is often higher than the cost of failure. Doing nothing feels safe in the short term, but it guarantees stagnation. Movement, even with missteps, creates momentum. Wealth thinkers separate identity from outcome. A failed product doesn't make them a failure. A bad investment doesn't make them incompetent. They understand that learning is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is the price of transformation. Instead of hiding from failure, they mine it. They squeeze lessons from it. And then they move forward stronger. This mindset also creates emotional resilience. When you've faced failure and recovered, you no longer fear it the same way. You become less reactive, more strategic. You stop chasing perfection and start pursuing progress. That shift makes you dangerous in the best way, because you're no longer held hostage by fear. Failure is also a filter. It clarifies what matters. It strips away ego and distraction. It forces you to get honest about your assumptions and priorities. In this way, failure doesn't just build wisdom, it builds focus. The truth is, you will make mistakes on the path to wealth. You will try things that don't work. You will misjudge opportunities, overspend, or delay when you should act. But none of that disqualifies you. What matters is not whether you fail, it's whether you learn. Failure handled correctly is feedback. It's the market telling you something. It's your habits being exposed. It's reality offering you a mirror. And the people who rise financially aren't the ones who avoid that mirror. They're the ones who look straight into it and grow. The sooner you stop fearing failure, the sooner you start growing faster. The faster you grow, the more skilled you become. And skill, not luck, is what builds lasting wealth. So fail. Learn. Repeat. It's not the setback that defines you, it's the bounce. Failure is not fatal, it's feedback, and a necessary part of the wealth-building process. Wealthy people expect mistakes and use them to refine their strategy. The biggest risk isn't failure, it's refusing to try in the first place. What past financial mistake are you still holding as a disqualification instead of a lesson? Write down one failure you've experienced financially. Underneath it, list 3 things it taught you, and 1 change you'll make because of it. Chapter 9: The Identity Shift. Behind every wealth builder is a deeper transformation, one that goes beyond habits, strategies, or numbers. It's a shift in identity. True financial change doesn't start with budgets or bank accounts. It starts with how you see yourself. Until you change your identity, every new habit will eventually collide with your old self-image. Most people live out the labels they've accepted. I'm bad with money. I'm just not a numbers person. I'll never get ahead. These aren't facts. They're stories, repeated until they become identities. And identities shape behavior. If you see yourself as someone who always struggles, you'll make decisions that reinforce that struggle, even when you know better. Wealth builders interrupt this pattern. They rewrite their internal narrative. They stop saying, I can't afford that, and start asking, how can I create that? They no longer see themselves as reactors to financial circumstances but as creators of financial outcomes. That subtle shift changes everything. This is why 2 people with the same income can produce radically different results. One sees money as survival. The other sees it as a tool. One avoids responsibility. The other embraces it. Identity determines direction. The person who believes they're a builder will act like one, tracking progress, seeking knowledge, staying consistent. Not perfectly, but persistently. This shift isn't instant. It takes practice. It starts with language, but it deepens with evidence. Each disciplined choice you make becomes a vote for your new identity. When you save instead of spend, you're proving to yourself that you're a steward. When you invest, you're proving you're an owner. When you learn from failure, you're proving you're a student of wealth, not a victim of it. Eventually, the actions reinforce the belief, and the belief strengthens the action. What begins as effort becomes identity. You stop acting like someone trying to be wealthy and start living as someone who already is becoming one. That internal shift is more powerful than any spreadsheet. This also explains why some people sabotage progress. Deep down, they still believe they're not the kind of person who gets ahead. So when results show up, they subconsciously find ways to undo them. Not because they hate success, but because it feels unfamiliar. The mind will always return to what it believes is true, even if that truth is outdated. Wealth thinkers do the opposite. They make the unfamiliar familiar. They get comfortable being disciplined, comfortable being focused, comfortable being different from the crowd. They stop needing approval and start pursuing alignment. Their identity is no longer shaped by circumstance, but by intention. You don't need to fake confidence. You just need to act in line with the person you're becoming. Over time, those actions create a new normal. And that new normal produces new results. There's a reason most lottery winners lose their money. They never became wealth builders in identity. And there's a reason many self-made millionaires can lose everything and rebuild it. They never stopped being builders. The external changed, but the internal stayed rooted. If you want lasting wealth, don't just change your behavior. Change your story. See yourself as a learner, a builder, a creator, a steward. Not someday, now star. Not when the numbers prove it, because your actions already are star. Wealth follows belief. Belief follows behavior. And behavior starts with identity. Long-term wealth is built on identity, not just habits or tactics. The stories you tell yourself shape the financial results you create. Each decision is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. What identity have you been living in that no longer serves your financial future? Write a new identity statement. I am the kind of person who... Fill it in with a belief that supports your wealth-building future, and live it out today. Chapter 10: Building Wealth Daily. Wealth is not the result of one big decision. It's the outcome of hundreds of small ones, stacked day after day. It's not built in windfalls or breakthroughs but in consistent, intentional choices repeated over time. The wealthy understand that every day is an opportunity to move forward, even if only by an inch. This daily approach may sound underwhelming in a culture obsessed with instant results. But it's the quiet rhythm of consistency that separates those who build wealth from those who only wish for it. The average person waits for the right time, the perfect plan, or a financial miracle. Wealth builders take what they have today and use it to build momentum. A single disciplined decision may not feel significant in the moment. Skipping one impulse purchase won't change your life. Reading one page of a finance book won't build a fortune. But repeated daily, these small acts create a trajectory. And over months and years, the gap between the one who acts and the one who delays becomes massive. Wealth builders anchor their days around simple principles. Spend less than you earn. Save before you spend. Invest consistently. Learn intentionally. These aren't secrets. They're behaviors. And what makes them powerful isn't their complexity, it's their repetition. Each day becomes a brick in the structure of financial freedom. This mindset also reduces overwhelm. When you realize wealth is built in days, not decades, you stop freezing in the face of big goals. You stop thinking, I need to fix everything now, and start asking, what's the next right move today? That question turns paralyzing goals into practical steps. Even setbacks become manageable in this frame. A bad financial day doesn't mean failure, it's just one data point. You get to reset tomorrow. Wealth builders don't aim for perfection. They aim for progress. They miss days like anyone else, but they don't let one slip become a slide. Their commitment is to the direction, not just the streak. Routine plays a key role in this. Wealth thinkers build systems that support their goals. They automate savings. They schedule review times. They create friction for spending and ease for investing. In doing so, they make the right decision the easy one, and the wrong decision a little harder. The real transformation happens when these daily actions become part of who you are. You stop having to convince yourself to do the right thing. It becomes your default. The question is no longer, should I save this month? But, how much more can I save? That shift only happens through repetition. Daily wealth building also creates awareness. When you check in with your money regularly, you start seeing patterns. You notice where money leaks. You spot opportunities to improve. You no longer drift, you drive. And that shift in attention increases both confidence and control. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. But a year of daily, deliberate action can reshape your entire financial trajectory. The key is to start where you are, with what you have, and to move with purpose. You don't need more time, more income, or more clarity to begin. You need to treat today like it matters, because it does. Wealth is not a future event. It's a daily practice. Each decision is a deposit. Each habit is a foundation. And each day you choose to build, you get closer to freedom. Wealth is the result of small, consistent actions practiced daily. Repetition, not intensity, builds long-term financial momentum. Direction matters more than perfection. Daily progress compounds over time. What small financial decision can you start repeating daily to move closer to wealth? Choose one daily habit, tracking expenses, saving, reading, or investing, and commit to it every day for the next 7 days. Chapter 11. You're not behind, you're starting now. It's easy to look back and feel regret. Regret for wasted time. Regret for money mismanaged. Regret for opportunities missed. But wealth building doesn't reward guilt, it rewards action. The only thing that matters now is what you do next. Not what age you are. Not what mistakes you've made. Not what you wish you knew sooner. The starting line is always right where you are. Many people delay financial growth because they believe they're too far behind. They compare themselves to others, scroll through highlight reels, and assume the race is already lost. But comparison is a thief, not just of joy, but of progress. It keeps you focused on others' timelines instead of your own growth. And the truth is, the wealth game doesn't reward the fastest start. It rewards the most consistent finish. You don't need a perfect history to create a powerful future. Some of the most disciplined wealth builders began in chaos. What changed wasn't their circumstances, it was their commitment. They decided to stop waiting and start moving. They stopped saying, "It's too late," and started saying, "It's still possible." Momentum doesn't ask for permission. It only asks for direction. One small win can lead to another. A single financial decision, made with intention, can alter your trajectory. The point is not to do everything overnight. The point is to begin. Because beginning breaks the cycle of stagnation. You're not too old. You're not too broke. You're not too far gone. You're not missing some secret ingredient that everyone else has. What you might be missing is consistency, clarity, or confidence, all of which can be built. But only if you start. Wealth isn't reserved for those who got it right early. It's available to those who decide to get it right now. And that decision is more powerful than any regret. Regret looks backward. Responsibility looks forward. Wealth builders choose the latter. Your past may explain how you got here, but it does not dictate where you go next. The decisions you make from this moment forward carry more weight than the ones behind you. That's not optimism. That's math. Time still compounds. Habits still grow. Ownership still scales. And you still have today. Everything you need to begin has already been covered. You know that wealth is a skill, not a stroke of luck. You know the difference between consumption and creation, between emotion and strategy, between fantasy and foundation. You've seen the daily habits, the mindset shifts, the practical tools. The blueprint is in your hands. What happens next is no longer about access, it's about application. Information without action is just entertainment. But when applied, it becomes transformation. The power is yours now. If you've ever felt discouraged watching others succeed financially, remind yourself, they started. That's it. They didn't wait for perfect. They didn't wait to feel ready. They took a step. You can too. And when you do, you'll stop feeling behind, because you'll be moving forward. Wealth doesn't need a perfect past. It needs a determined present. You don't have to catch up to anyone. You only need to commit to the next right step for you. And once you do, you'll realize something freeing: you were never behind. You were just pre-decision. Now you've decided. The past doesn't disqualify you, what matters is what you do next. Comparison delays progress, action creates it. You're not behind, you're just now beginning with clarity and intention. What belief about being behind has held you back, and how can you replace it with action? Make a 30-day wealth habit commitment, choose one action, and track your consistency starting today. Take care and be well.